For our next segment, we have Jackson Sloan. She is via Skype, and she's the National Director of Cut50. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you for having me on. Good morning.
Jessica, what are some of the positive changes that you've seen happen since the First Step Act has become law?
Well, so the First Step Act was passed back in December and signed into law on December 21st. We got in right before the government shut down. We were standing there in the Oval Office just hours before. The First Step Act is a bill, the federal criminal justice bill, that gets people job ready when they're coming home from prison. So there are a lot of pieces that need to be implemented. We've seen some of those get started, such as the Fair Sentencing Act, the crack cocaine disparity being corrected retroactively, and some folks have benefited and actually come home.
And what about on the state level? I mean, obviously the First Step Act is only regulating the federal incarceration system. How have states been responding to this, and have they been incorporating some of the language of the First Step Act into their own laws?
Well, there's 2.2 million people who are incarcerated in the United States. We spend $80 billion a year incarcerating them. About 186,000 of them are incarcerated in the federal system and will benefit from the First Step Act that was passed in December. The other 2 million of them are incarcerated in state and local jails. So we've been very excited this legislative session. We've heard from legislators all across the country. I think there are probably going to be 9 or 10 First Step Act bills moving in the states. One was actually just introduced in Florida. Very exciting. So these are bills that are going to make sure that the state systems, like the federal system now, are focused on rehabilitation, focused on treating people inside with respect and dignity, and focused on making sure that they succeed when they come home.
Jessica, I noticed that for and we had someone from the White House to talk about this, that the First Step Act was really focused on rehabilitating nonviolent criminals as opposed to violent criminals. Can you talk about why it's structured in that way?
Well, first, let me say I think that's a silly distinction to make between violent and nonviolent, because our goal should be to increase public safety. And anybody who goes to prison is going to need access to rehabilitative programming and really need access to incentives so that they can complete that rehabilitative programming and come home in a better position than when they went to prison. Majority of the First Step Act applies to all people who committed crimes, but there is a portion in there that creates an incentive structure for people who classify. I think that's about 106,000 people out of that 186,000 people to get a earned time credit and earned time off of their sentence by completing programming that will change their lives.
And Jessica, can you talk a little bit about what this act looks like on the ground? I mean, how are prisoners already being affected by it? And have we seen any examples of someone who has been positively affected by the First Step Act?
Yes. So again, this is a bill that gets people job ready. In order to do so, it creates a risk and needs assessment. So when people come into the prison, they're going to have a risk and needs assessment that will actually match them up with the programming they need. And then they get that programming and they come home in a better position to succeed. It also increases the dignity for incarcerated women, making sure we stop shackling pregnant women, get women the hygiene items they need, and other things. Matthew Charles, whose case has been all over the media recently, was the first person to come home from the First Step Act. His case had caught a whole lot of traction because he had actually been let out for a couple of years and then had to go back because of a court error.
So, and Jessica, real quick, because we got to wrap, but you have a very interesting personal story of how you got involved with Cut50, and we put your model or your goal on screen, which is to cut crime and incarceration in all 50 states, hence the name Cut50, hashtag Cut50. But tell us real quick how you got into this.
Well, I come to this from both a personal and a professional place. I actually came to this issue when I was 22 years old. I knew nothing about the prison system until I was standing in a courtroom watching my husband get sentenced to 6 years in prison because of his drug addiction. That's what prompted me to go to college and law school and eventually co-found Cut50.
Great. And we have a Facebook question, and they say, what do you think about celebrities getting involved in this process?
I think it's wonderful. I have worked very closely with many celebrities, including Kim Kardashian. She has been an incredible voice for those inside. Jay-Z, Meek Mill just launched a new organization called Reform that talks about probation and parole and what's happening when people come home. Celebrities are able to amplify and elevate and empower the people who have been impacted, tell their stories, and reach a whole new audience. So I'm always thrilled when they want to come and join the fight.
All right. Thanks so much, Jessica Jackson Sloan, for joining us.
Thank